Hey guys, GPE Jesus here. The AP exam is coming up. Since the exam only covers FRQs, we're going to be covering a lot of FRQs over the next few videos to really get a handle on all types of situations you'll probably encounter on the exam. For this video, we'll cover a long FRQ from my AP classroom on units 2, 3, and 4. So here's the original problem. Try it out yourself first, and then we'll go over it. Good luck. Okay, let's begin. So the first thing we need to do is draw an aggregate supply and demand graph for part A. So let's quickly label everything. So now that we got the basic graph set up, we need to figure out where to put long run aggregate supply. If we read the top part carefully, we need to assume that the actual unemployment rate is lower than the natural rate of unemployment. We can first think about it intuitively. During a recession like we are in now, unemployment rates are much higher than natural rate of unemployment. So if the opposite were true and unemployment rate is lower than the natural rate of unemployment, then we must have an inflationary gap. And that means that our short run output, which is right here, would be ahead of the long run output. And so therefore, you would draw long run aggregate supply to the left. Let's finish labeling with YF. Y1 for the short run equilibrium's output, and PO1 for the short run equilibrium position's price level. And so as we can see between these two of potential output and the short run output, this is the inflationary gap. So that's part A done. You get 1 point for drawing the graph and the labeling correctly, and another point for drawing a vertical LRAS to the left of the short run equilibrium. Now let's move on to part B. What open market operation can the country's central bank use to move the economy towards long-run equilibrium? Well, with open market operations, we really have two options: sell bonds or buy bonds. Remember that if we buy bonds, we'll shift the money supply to the right, with the central bank paying for the bond and giving the bank cash, all in all lowering nominal interest rates. While selling bonds would shift money supply to the left instead and increase nominal interest rates. Now since we're in an inflationary gap, we want to shift money supply to the left by selling bonds to increase nominal interest rates. Now this increase in nominal interest rates will lead to a decrease in borrowing and consumption of interest sensitive goods, which will lead to a decrease in investment expenditures and would shift aggregate demand to the left. So for B, we'd want to sell bonds. And you get a point for saying that the central bank would want to sell bonds. Okay, let's now move on to part C, which wants us to draw a money market graph. Remember that money demand is downward sloping, while money supply would be vertical, as it is controlled by the central bank. Now we already know that money supply will be shifted to the left if you sell bonds, but what we really need to show is the increase in nominal interest rates, which we can see when we shift money supply left. Now for part C, you would get 1 point for drawing the money market graph right and another for showing that money supply shifts left and displaying the increase in nominal interest rates, which we've just done. The part D asks how this increase in nominal interest rates will affect real output and the natural rate of unemployment. Well, here we have to explain how the increase in nominal interest rates leads to decrease in borrowing, meaning the investment expenditures decreases and aggregate demand shifts to the left. Which if we scroll back up to our first graph, and we do a little bit of shifting, we'll see that our new output at YF is less than the output at Y1. So real output decreases. And natural unemployment, it'll have no change since, well, long-run aggregate supply isn't shifting anywhere. Usually questions about natural rate of unemployment, unless it's referring to economic growth, is usually no change. It's just a trick question. And so finally, let's go to part E. There's a new situation where the central bank and the government does nothing. So this is obviously a question about the economy self-correcting. Now if we go back to our first graph, delete the shifting of aggregate demand since in this case it hasn't changed, the economy will self-correct, meaning that short-run aggregate supply will shift to the left to return back to long-run equilibrium. Now why will short-run aggregate supply shift to the left? Well, when the economy is experiencing an inflationary gap, the workers are overworked. Because of this, we'll demand higher nominal wages. This means that the company has to pay for larger input costs, and overall, shortened aggregate supply will shift to the left. On a test, you would say that this is because nominal wages increase. And finally, we have to talk about employment, which will decrease due to these higher input costs of higher nominal wages. And one thing that's very easy to get tricked on is that it says employment. It's very easy to misread it as unemployment, so you gotta read it carefully. But yeah, employment will decrease. And for part E, you would get a point for saying the SRAS shifts left because nominal wages increase, and another point for saying employment decreases. So yeah, that's how you do this question. If this video helps you get a 5, subscribe. If it doesn't, dislike. If you have any questions, read the Khan Academy article I linked or ask it in the comments. GPGs is out. I died for your grades.